It's Thursday, April the 10th, and it's time for Let's Talk Power Live. I'm so excited to be here today. We're almost at the middle of April. I don't know where time is going, but let me tell you what, it is on the move. And I'm trying to catch up. I hope you are too. What am I thankful for? I'm thankful for a lot of things, but I'm really thankful that April is Library Month, Library Appreciation Month. With all the attacks that are underway around around books, around learning, around young people having access to the books that we all think they should and we all know that they should, celebrating libraries and librarians is even more important. So I'm thankful that as a child, I had a local library where I lived. I'm thankful I currently live in a town with an extraordinary library. I'm thankful that when I was riding the highways back and forth trying to get my doctorate, I was also fortunate to have access to a library where I could borrow audiobooks and all my books for my materials to learn. So this month, let's take time to be thankful for the librarians and the libraries in our life. And that's what I'm thankful for. What are you thankful for? Take time to be thankful. Take time to express gratitude. All right, let's get started today. We are going to be talking about let me pull it up right here, a really important topic. It's April in schools. We're coming out of March. Folks are in the middle. Some are headed towards spring break. Some may have even had spring break. I don't know, you have this early. And either wherever you are in your learning calendar, we know we are about to enter high stakes testing. We know that this time in some states, they've already started. I know Massachusetts, they've begun their what's called MCAS, and it goes for an extended amount of time here until the end, until June. And some folks have concentrated testing time. We're going to take time today. Let's Talk Power Live is really going to be looking at a way to rethink testing. I found out some good stuff and want to share some ideas that I even used that really helped my students as we entered this time. But first up, I want to make sure, have you registered? We know that there's a lot going on with our education system. We know the world is moving at a breakneck speed. And I want to make sure that you are ready to navigate the space, that you are indeed ready to register, and that you have all of the information you need. It takes place on the 16th, which is next Thursday at 6 p.m. I'm going to put up our space right here, our navigating the space. There is the QR code later, not the QR code, sorry about that. There's the link for you to go ahead and register. Later on in our time, I will be putting up a QR code to make registration a little bit easier for you. Go ahead and register. Why should you register? Number one, if you are a state leader, this particular session is going to offer you some clear strategies. It's going to also give you an opportunity to strategize. A lot of times webinars are sit and get. You listen, you might take some notes, you might not take some notes. During this session, I've designed it so that you can actually get some work done. We're going to be looking at four major things. Number one, I'm going to recount what's happening with all the title programs. We are really concerned that with the way in which dollars are going to be allocated in what's called these block grants are going to really impact how state leaders are going to look at how to use their money. You get your money from the federal government, 10%, somewhere between 5-ish and maybe 11-ish% of all funds to states are from the federal government. But in that percentage, it really allows states to earmark money in targeted ways for their title programs that are meant to support young people who are our most vulnerable, who need the most support, whose dollars need extra funding so that they can get the academic supports and get their academic needs met in ways that require and necessitate more money than just their state level funds. Being able to rely on designated funds that you don't have to tap into your larger pot gives you flexibility so you can meet the needs of our most vulnerable students. Being able to look at what you might do with those dollars now that they're going to all be in one pot is really important. The other thing to really think about and what we're going to tackle is what's happening with these services. Services now are going to be moved around, and how do we ensure, again, our most vulnerable students don't experience service disruptions. So we're going to do a little bit of strategizing during this session, and you're going to be in community. Preparation and community are the superpower we need right now to be prepared, to be ready, so that whatever happens, our heads aren't on a swivel. When curriculum was changed and folks were required to take books off shelves, to redo their curriculum, to go back to the table and redo lessons. Folks were caught off guard because no one thought in the United States of America that books would be banned. We left those ideas for the fictional tales in books like Fahrenheit 451. Nobody expected the false fight on critical race theory put forth by Chris Rufo to be a real thing. Well, what's happening now is a real thing. And we want our leaders to be prepared. Preparation is power. And so during this session, we're going to really put some power to preparation. So go ahead and get yourself registered for that. So next up, you know what I ask every week. I ask you every week, do you have your copy of Understanding Your Instructional Power, Curriculum and Language Supports to help each student? Here is what the former dean of American University School of Education had to say. Dr. Tangi Reed Marshall lands a seminal read that is not to be missed. That's what she said. Really important because power in education is a real thing. The dynamics of power show up in so many ways. And one of the leading ways it shows up and why it is so real is because there is inherent differentials between the end user, who is the student, and the delivery mechanism, who are adults. And because the end user is a person who has limited legal rights because of their age, they are the most vulnerable. And power tends to move when there is a differential that is steeped in naturally occurring inherent differentials. In my book, I really help educators at all levels, even when this book is centered toward the classroom educator. Make no mistake, wherever you are in your educational level or position, this book is going to help you. So what I do is I help you think back to, how did you learn about power? Where did it come from? And then I help you walk through understanding how it's showing up in your instructional decision making. So get the book. There's the QR code, and we'll come back with that. So last week, we really started looking at how do we understand power in schooling situations, in the school environment. And again, power is a real thing. We tend to behave as though power in education is a abstract, something that doesn't happen simply because we're in school and school is a nurturing place. Make no mistake, where two or three are gathered and people have the opportunity to manage and or control the resources and behavior of another human being, power is present. And so we want to make sure that we really look at how we understand power in this dynamic. What we said was power does not equal control. That was the premise of our conversation last week. It's not about control. But here's what we do know. Here's what I have learned in my study about power, and particularly power in school. It really comes down to how one understands the relationship between adults and students. And it really does come down to the adult's personal power belief system. It comes down to how you, as an adult, began to learn about power and how you began to understand the role and the relationship between young people and adults. If you grew up in an environment where children are to be seen and not heard, that is a natural filter that shapes how you make decisions. If you're an adult that grew up in a home, in an environment where young people and the adults around them really were able to engage in dialogue, the input of young people was actively sought, children were able to voice ideas and opinions, you might be more inclined to create an environment, a learning environment where young people operate at that in that same way. If, like I said earlier, you grew up in a home or in an environment where young people are largely believed that they must be seen and not heard, you will have to work a lot harder to disrupt the automaticity of that belief system in how you interact with the young people in your life. And so power is not about control, but if you do not know where your thought patterns around power come from, you might lean into control. But here's what power really is about. It's about influence. It really is about how are you in relationship, in partnership with the young people that you have the privilege to help learn. And you have to be able to know that because of the ratio differential, and believe me, I know I've been in schools, I've been an educator. I was actually in a classroom for many, many years, more than a decade of teaching in a classroom. The ratio of adult to student also becomes a way in which we might lean into control. And we talk about classroom management. If a teacher can quote unquote control their classroom, we have to dispel that. We have to understand that we do not control behavior. What we do is we help young people manage their behavior so that we can have an optimal learning environment for everyone involved. But if we lean into a power as control and miss the possibilities about power as influence, we have a disenfranchising learning environment. So the goal is to really, really see how can we lean into power as an influencer so that we can be in authentic partnership, that it helps young people learn some things and learn how to do some things. That was a recap of last week. So what are we talking about this week? Guess what? It's testing season. Whew. I remember testing season. I remember it not so much as a child, because when I was in school, we didn't do testing the way that we do it now. But I remember being in testing season as a teacher, and it was really not fun for me. So I know it was not fun for my young people. It was highly stressful. It created a lot of anxiety. And it wasn't until I really began to think differently about it that I began to make some critical shifts in my pedagogy. So here's what I came to realize. We use test and assess almost interchangeably. But here's what I learned. Assess really comes from the Latin root that means sit beside. Think about that. We use assess as the word for test. And wait till you hear what test is all about. I'm going to get to that in a second. But assess is about sitting beside and helping to learn. That's what assessing is about at its core. Now, test, it really comes from, and I'm going to get this right. So I'm going to look at my notes right here. Test actually has nothing to do with how we use it. It really is about an empty bucket. Go figure. I was astonished when I began to learn that. We use test and assess interchangeably. We use it for test tube. We this idea of a vessel that holds something. It really is not about evaluation. We have used it about evaluation. And when I say it's not about evaluation, what I mean is when you go back and do the etymology around the word test, it's not about what the thing we use. It has become that. When we look at assess, we are sitting beside the learner to help them figure out something about their thinking and something about their learning decisions. Unfortunately, we haven't really done that much. We have taken the learning out of assessing and put it all in this test, evaluate, measurement framework, which has really become this disenfranchising model. So, what does it mean that we have to do? We have to have a belief shift. Our old belief is testing is high stakes, testing is stressful. But what we really need to do is we need to move into a more testing as a moment, right? Assessing. We need to move out of testing into assessing, where we bring the learner more directly into the process of understanding their own thinking. What am I thinking? How do I know what I'm thinking? And we call that metacognition, right? Having a person think about what they're thinking about. We want our young people to see it as a moment, use it as a tool for agency building and reflection. We talk a lot about student agency, and you've heard me talk about student agency. Taking an assess framework is an avenue for agency development. Because what it does is it helps young people really begin to think strategically about themselves as opposed to making it something outside of themselves. So we know this model. We know this boot camp model. We know that testing is about young people sitting in rows upon rows, hating it, having high anxiety. We know that model. And we know that far too many young people are experiencing testing and not really experiencing this idea, learning and agency development. We're not experiencing that. So, what does it look like if we were to take a different model and really help young people do what matters to them? And that is learn. This week, I really want us to focus on who and what matters the most. And we keep saying that young people are at the center. And yet, everything, well, that's too far. A lot of what we do does not move in the best interest of our student. We speak a lot about agency, and what we do is manage their choices. We speak a lot about students at the center, when what we do is put them at the center of adult decision making. And that's particularly true when we start looking at and thinking about the ways in which we test, measure, evaluate. What I want us to do is challenge ourselves to think about how we can move into assess. So let's do it. So we want to move from disenfranchisement to learning agency. And here's a way to get it done. We'll look at our strategic movement. We have to be deliberate and we have to be strategic in how we get this done. Because in a lot of schools, they're going to boot camp you. You're going to have you're going to move all the kids around. You're going to do cycle upon cycle of pre-testing, and you're going to shut the whole school down. You're going to marshal kids as though it is the pre-test. It's like kids are going to a free Kaplan session, right? They're going to Princeton Review at school and mock tests. I've been there. I know. And it is not fun. And we very rarely take the time to ask young people, how do they think about testing? How do students think about testing? Well, here's what they think. Number one, it creates stress and anxiety. It does that. It is a negative impact on learning. They're not learning because we're not asking them about their thoughts, right? So the other thing is, what do they know about what happens or why they make mistakes? We don't take the time to ask them that. So on top of all of the stress, on top of it having a negative impact on learning, it also creates an environment where it doesn't really impact their academic performance. They don't get enough in-time information to make sense of what they can do if they make a mistake. So what can we do to really, really help young people do better and help them see that a mistake is a mistake, right? We learn most when we make mistakes. So here's something I used to do with my young people. I'm going to make the screen a little bit bigger this time so you can see it. What I used to do with my young people, I would do a mistake analysis. So here's a power move. Use a mistake analysis. And we didn't have digital notebooks back then. Back then, I can't believe it. But anyway, we didn't have digital notebooks. But I had a learning notebook. What I would have my young people do is take a clean sheet of paper. They would make 5 columns. They would label them question number. They would label it type of mistake. They would label it why their answer was incorrect. They would ask for what the correct answer was, and then they would have to think about why that answer was correct. And they had these, you can see at the bottom, the mistake coding, RIT. They had a reading issue and they misread the text. Then they had an RIQ. They had a reading issue because they misread the question. Then they had an S for lack of skill. Maybe they just didn't know what the skill was. Was it compare and contrast, cause and effect? Maybe they just didn't know what to do. And then they had a DNR. They just didn't read. So they would go through a particular, maybe it was their due now. Maybe it was one of those high stake prep test sessions that we did. Maybe it was just at the end of a unit assessment. So what they would do is they would go and get their tests back, and they would go through and conduct this mistake analysis. And they would take the time when they were done to really do a trend analysis. What kind of mistake were they most likely to make? And then think strategically about what they could do the next time they would get an assessment of any kind. Maybe they needed to slow down. Maybe they needed to get to me and ask for extra help if it was on a skill issue. Maybe they had a classroom peer or buddy that they could be in communication with. Anything they could do to begin to slow down and think metacognitively around why they were making mistakes. That is what this idea is all about. That's what this power move is meant to do. So here's the process. Use this after a quiz, use it after a benchmark, use it even after a classroom assignment, anything where a young person is able to take ownership of their own learning and allow them to sit with their peers. Let them justify new correct responses. Let them examine their own thinking. Help them understand that they own this particular process. Then have a debrief. Bring the whole class together and allow them to, number one, work in their journal, right? Work in their journal, really begin to dig deep and do those reflective questions, and then allow them to choose when they want to use it. They don't have to use it every time. That's part of their ownership. Don't make this a lockstep. You must do it every time. Help them begin to think through the benefits of it so that they are prepared to make the proper learning decision about when to do it. So, why does this even matter? What are the benefits of this? Number one, it moves beyond skill and drill or drill and kill. Number one, it builds learner agency through metacognition. It fosters deeper engagement and it reduces stress by focusing on learning versus just on scores. Kids are going to get scores. They know that they're going to get scores. So they've got to be able to do something alongside getting the scores. We keep saying that we want young people to learn. This is a critical way to help them own their learning, improve their results, and then be in conversation and in learning community with their peers. One of the things I would do is I would divide the class up and I would put them in teams and help them, one, work together on sets of questions, right? They would work independently, do your own mistake analysis, get into groups with your colleagues, your peers, work on each other's mistake analyses, and then let's come together as a class. Let's come together as a group of learners and definitely begin to understand what to do and how to do this. Assessments are not going to go away, but let's assess. Let's have them sit beside each other, right? We have a choice. We can choose disenfranchisement or we can choose agency. The question is, what will you choose? How are you going to foster agency development during this time, this testing season when stress levels are going to go high? Student efficacy might begin to get low, and our power dynamics are going to lean towards power protecting and disenfranchisement because we're stressed. And if we don't know our power centers, we're going to hit our default buttons. So let's choose agency development. So here's what I have for you. I'm so excited. You can actually get that tool that I showed you. I have it in a great little package for you. You can get the tool, go ahead and scan this QR code, or go ahead and type this link into your device and go ahead and get the tool. I forgot to do something earlier. I forgot to ask you to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. We all know how these algorithms work. And we all know that it's going to take all of us to build a community. So if what we talk about in Let's Talk Power Live is of interest to you and interest to someone you know, subscribe, like, and share. But today, get today's tool. I'm going to be releasing tools every single week as we begin to dig deeper into our power discussions as we move forward into other topics of interest related to power. And if you want to go deeper, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and get the book. I'm going to pull it back up and then going to give you an opportunity to get some time to schedule a power talk with me. So again, remember I said earlier, register. Here's the QR code. There it is right there. Go ahead, register for it, navigate the new educational landscape. There's a QR code. There is the link right there. And then there's a QR code for the book. Want a signed copy? This is how you're going to get it. $23. Go to our website. Let me see if I can put it up for you. That's our website, and it will take you to the book where you can get it for yourself. There's that. And of course, I want to be in contact with you. Want to have a power talk? Want to really get into your own power dynamics and understanding how power shifts the environment and shapes decisions? You're going to want to be in conversation with me. All right. So there we go. I will see you next week. Thank you so much.